Welcome to another religious education 5-minute recap video. We're on the exam board Eduqas. Today we're looking at applied Catholic theology. The unit is life and death. And today we're going to focus on Catholic attitudes towards euthanasia and assisted suicide. And your aim for today's session is to make sure you can explain those attitudes. Now, firstly, we have to make a distinction between what euthanasia and assisted suicide actually are. Now, euthanasia, it comes from the Greek term, which means gentle death. And it's the process where a medical professional gives medication to end the life of a person who is suffering from prolonged incurable condition. And that's the idea of gentle death. Somebody is suffering and they want their life to be ended. Voluntary euthanasia, which is when you ask for it, is done on the request of the individual whose life will be ended. So that person will ask for the life to be ended. Voluntary euthanasia can be legal in quite a few places, but in particular, Netherlands quite famously allow it. Now, in contrast, assisted suicide is a term used when an individual seeks help to end their own life. So you can see the difference there. It's not about a prolonged incurable condition. It's just somebody who's asking to have their life ended. And again, some countries have changed their laws to allow this to happen. Netherlands allow assisted suicide. Switzerland have updated their laws to allow assisted suicide as well. However, for your arguments and for your ideas, it's really important to also know that both of these are illegal in the UK. It is not acceptable to go through with euthanasia or assisted suicide. Focusing on Catholics and their attitude towards euthanasia and assisted suicide, quite simply, they're completely against both of them. Now, there are a multitude of reasons, and perhaps most importantly, quite simply, Catholics believe that ending a life is wrong. Obviously, taking life away is not acceptable. You know, life is a gift. Secondly, life is sacred and it should be protected. So sacred means holy, and therefore something that's holy belongs to God. It should be looked after, it should be cared for. A key term coming for you now is sanctity of life. And this is a belief that life is a gift from God. And therefore a gift you treasure, you care for, you look after, and therefore you shouldn't be destroying or harming it in any way. Another one is that it is a form of murder. Ending a life is murder, and that is unacceptable. Catholics also argue that alternatives are available, such as palliative care. Now, palliative care we've looked at in an earlier video, but this is where you provide end-of-life care for somebody who's got serious suffering, serious pain and incurable illness. And the idea here for palliative care is that you try and make their lives as comfortable as possible and give them a good quality of life before they naturally pass away. And finally, Catholics also believe that suffering reminds us of Jesus and it helps to grow and develop. So the idea, through your suffering, you can suffer just like Jesus did on the cross, and that suffering can help to bring you closer to God. Now, looking at all of these, I'm thinking previously to some of our other units, such as origins and meanings, and there's a couple of good sources of evidence that you could pull in here. I'm thinking Genesis 1:27, which says we're made in the image of God. You could link that in as a piece of evidence to life being sacred or the sanctity of life. You could also think about the Ten Commandments. It's a form of murder. You could say do not kill from the Ten Commandments. So there's a good, nice core piece of evidence you can get there to support some of these answers. However, for this particular answer, we want to focus on Pope John Paul II. Now, he wrote a letter called Evangelium Vitae, which means the Gospel of Life. And what he says in this letter is that euthanasia is the deliberate and morally unacceptable killing of a human person. In a nutshell, it is totally wrong. You cannot take part in euthanasia. It is killing somebody. It is murder. Now, other one we talked about before, but if you talk about Imago Dei, or the image of God, then this shows how life is sacred, that life is a gift from God, and therefore it cannot be harmed or hurt in any way. Again, we mentioned this, but do not kill from the Ten Commandments. You could talk about how euthanasia is a form of murder and support it with that piece of evidence. And finally, if you were talking about Pope John Paul or Evangelium Vitae, just make sure that you also mention how palliative care is a good way to prepare for death, that you want to make somebody feel comfortable and supported at the end of their life. Hopefully now you can explain Catholic attitude towards euthanasia and assisted suicide. I'd look down this list of key words and I'd try and write a sentence for each one and how it links to that aim. If you can do that, then you've been successful today. If you find it a little bit tough, I'd go back through the video, pause it where you need to, make a couple of notes, and then come back to this task. If you want to push yourself that little bit further, then what you could do is go onto these B-style questions, give them a go, see how you get on, provide some information. Good luck, and thank you for listening to me today.